Hello there, welcome to the Football Bloc. My name is Brandon. Today I'm going to give you my prediction for the 2023 Asian Cup final. So if that sounds interesting, let's hop right into it.
One step beyond.
So the Asian Cup final is finally here. We have two teams left. Two teams that have the potential to be crowned the kings of Asia. We have Jordan going up against the host and reigning champions, Qatar. So I'm going to go and look at each of these teams' journey up until this point. Look at how the two teams line up against each other. And of course, I'm going to give you my score prediction for what I think is going to happen in the final. I'm really excited for this final. This is a really interesting lineup. It's an all-Arab final for the first time since 2007. And that within itself is not super surprising, but the fact that it is Jordan facing Qatar, that's a little surprising. If it was, say, Saudi Arabia versus Qatar, that'd be believable, but Jordan is the underdog team here. So will it be Jordan winning their first ever Asian Cup, an underdog story, or will it be the host nation and the reigning champions, Qatar, forming a dynasty and redeeming themselves for their pretty abysmal performance at the World Cup in 2022, which they were the host of as well. So speaking of Qatar, let's look at them first. They were drawn into Group A alongside Lebanon, China, and Tajikistan. Overall, a pretty easy group for them. They were easily the best team in the group. Most people expected them to top the group with little effort needed, and that's essentially what happened. They started off the game with this tournament with a really good game against Lebanon, a 3-0 victory there. And I would say this is probably their best performance of the entire tournament when you just look at how structured they were defensively, how good they were going forward. And then in the next few games, it was a 1-0 win over Tajikistan and then a 1-0 win over China. But they were still the better team in both of those games. But because the manager, Tintin Lopez, decided to chop and change the formation a little bit, there was a bit of a lack of consistency going through between each game. And as a result, while they did win, it wasn't the most convincing performances. But still, they topped the group. 3 wins out of 3, 9 points, 0 goals conceded. They go into the round of 16 against Palestine. And Palestine, I think, gave them a little bit of a shock. Of course, there's a clear talent gap between Qatar and Palestine. But the Palestinians came into this game with a whole lot of passion, a whole lot of sheer just dedication and determination. And it was a really good performance. Palestine actually pounced on a defensive mistake and scored first, but Qatar, I think, kind of woke up after going down, and then their superior talent came through, and then they ended up winning. But into the quarterfinals, I think this is where we start to see Qatar going up against a serious opponent. Not to say that their previous opponents were weak or anything like that, but there was a very clear talent gap between the two. And not to say that Uzbekistan is one of the best teams in the world, but at least going off form on this tournament and also their attacking talent in comparison to the rest of the teams in this tournament, this was going to be a very tough game for Qatar, which it ultimately turned out to be. It ended up being 1-1. Qatar went through on penalties, but I think that there was times where Qatar looked a little bit lost. They looked a little bit flustered. Their backs were up against the wall. They did score first, but they got a little bit lucky with that goal, and perhaps that led them to be a little complacent throughout the game. But their goalkeeper, Bashar Al-Rawi, stood up tall and had a wonderful performance there, saving his national team, leading them to their last game, the semifinal against Iran. Now, I personally thought that Iran was going to win this. I didn't think it was going to be, a complete blowout or anything like that. But I did think that Iran overall is the better team, and I still think that. I think that, throughout the rest of the tournament, Iran has had better performances. But this was a great game. It started off really tight. The whole game was wide open. Both teams had numerous chances. Serdar Azmoun scored a relatively lucky goal, but then Qatar equalized shortly after with a lucky goal themselves. Jassim scored with a heavy deflection. Now, it was a moment of brilliance that saw Qatar go in front after a wonderful goal from Akram Afif. Now, for all those people that say that Qatar benefit from refereeing decisions or they bought out the referees, I think that, to be honest, that whole notion got thrown out the window here because Iran was awarded a penalty. Fatih looked like he hit the ball with his hand, but he clearly had his hand up like this and covering his face. His arm was not out in an unnatural position. Also, if you look at the proximity from the shots, he was right in front of it. He realistically can't move his hand out of the way anyway. Anyway, Qatar was awarded the penalty. Jahanbash stepped up and scored. At that point, it was tied 2-2, and Iran had, to be honest, more of the chances, but out of nowhere, there was a shot that found its way to Almoez Ali. He was able to stop the ball, settle it, and with a really nice finish, actually, he slotted it into the bottom corner there. 3-2 to Qatar. And Iran really came close to scoring. Mehdi Taremi had a poor game. He should have put away 2 of those chances that he had, but Qatar was able to hold on to that lead, and they find themselves in the final. This team has some flaws in it. Defensively, they've only conceded 4 goals, but still, like I said before, they haven't gone up against the toughest opposition, at least going forward, until the quarterfinals and the semifinals. So you have to take that into account as well. But on the flip side, if you look at just how good their front line is, in particular, Akram Afif. He has been the best player of the tournament so far. 5 goals and I believe 2 assists as well. He has been absolutely bossing this tournament. Just the amount of goals that he scored and the beauty of each goal, and not just the goals and not just the assists, not just the numbers that appear on paper, but what he offers to the Qatari team going forward. Just the motivation that he offers to the rest of his players is really good. And then, of course, you have a guy like Almoez Ali, who, while not having the best tournament so far compared to 2019, still, he is a very dangerous player to have there. And then while he might not be putting up the same numbers, still his presence in the box offers a lot to the rest of the team as well. And this team is star-studded in comparison to Asian football, at least. Hassan El Haido's the captain. Also a guy in the midfield / defense like Mohamed Wad. Barsham, who the goalkeeper, has had some iffy moments, but he's also had some wonderful moments throughout here as well. He can step up and save his team when needed. Overall, this is a very stacked team, a very tough opponent. As for Jordan, they've had a very, very interesting and fun path to the final. They were drawn into it was looking like a tough group with Malaysia, Bahrain, and South Korea. Malaysia was a team that a lot of people expected them to be an underdog. Maybe a bit of a surprise package there. And Jordan came out with a statement win, beating them 4-0 in the opening game there. A wonderful display in the first half. Now, the second half, Jordan kind of receded a little bit. Malaysia was pretty good in the second half, I thought, but it obviously wasn't enough to overcome the massive deficit, and it wasn't enough to undo the hard work that Jordan put in the first half. The second game against South Korea, though, was very interesting. South Korea did score first, but Jordan then went into overdrive. They completely outplayed South Korea for a span of maybe 30 minutes. They played them off the park. They scored a goal that was a bit lucky, but then immediately after that, they scored a really nice volley to gain a 2-1 lead. It could have been more than that, but then into the second half, whether it was a conscious decision from the manager to conserve energy or the players just couldn't recreate that intense, passionate performance that they had in the first half, they kind of sat back a little bit, and South Korea came back into the match. They were knocking on the door, and then they eventually scored an equalizer very, very late into the match. But still, 2-2 result against South Korea, very, very admirable. However, the next match against Bahrain, the pivotal match there, Jordan ended up losing that match. Very disappointing performance, very meek performance there. They had a few chances, but they didn't capitalize on them. And then going back, they were very, very just lazy, for lack of a better term. And Bahrain was able to capitalize on that and score. And then that meant that Bahrain leapfrogged Jordan. So Jordan went from top of the group to third. And then they had to go play Iraq in the next round. And at this point, Iraq was probably the best team in the tournament. They had just topped their group. They beat Japan as well, and it was looking like this was going to be an exit for Jordan, which if their tournament ended there, it would have been an admirable tournament, good tournament there. Most people probably would have expected Jordan to go out in the round of 16 anyway, but they ended up defeating Iraq. Now, this was a very controversial game. Similarly to the last match against Jordan, I think Iraq kind of went into this game maybe fatigued or maybe a little arrogant, considering how well they were playing up to that point, because Jordan was on the front foot. They eventually scored. They capitalized on a defensive error from the Iraqi center backs. But after that point, and then throughout the entirety of the second half, Iraq was the better team. They equalized, and then Ayman Hussein scored a really nice goal to get in the lead. But then with his controversial goal celebration, he got sent off. He got a red card there. And then after they were a man down, Jordan had just rush of adrenaline. They were able to grab a few chances, which they scored from, and then immediately after they grabbed a third to score with only a few seconds left on the clock. Amazing game overall. I highly recommend watching it if you have not already. But as a result, Jordan surprisingly shocked Iraq. They went to the quarterfinals against Tajikistan, and this was a game that I think they were expected to win. As good as Tajikistan were, they're probably on the lower echelon of Asian football, miles behind Jordan, and, commendable performance from them. It was a very professional performance from Jordan in particular. They defeated them going up against South Korea in the semifinals in that last match here. And while the game against South Korea in the group stage was very up and down, this one was the complete opposite. From minute 1 to minute 90, Jordan was the better team. They restricted South Korea to little to no chances at all. The chances that South Korea did have was just from individual brilliance from the very talented players that they do have. Other than that, they had nothing going forward. This match ended up finishing 2-0. But it could have been more than that if the goalkeeper for South Korea, if Woo didn't make as many saves as he did. This could have been 3-4-0. Every department of the field, whether it's the defense, restricting South Korea from any chances, the midfield holding onto the ball, or the frontline attack just tearing South Korea's defense to shreds. It was a perfect performance. Yazan scored the opening goal, but Altamari and Al-Mardi both had a wonderful game, just as they have been having throughout the tournament. Altamari, in my opinion, in particular, is a standout player for this team. He plays for Montpellier in France. He's actually having a really good season overall. Now, this run to the final is very interesting because, as I mentioned before in the Iraq game, that red card that went to Ayman Hussein, I personally think should not have been given. If that red card wasn't given, I think Iraq maintained their lead and Jordan get eliminated there. So this whole run up until this point could have not happened if not for that, in my opinion, erroneous refereeing mistake. Not to mention, if Jordan don't bottle that last game against Bahrain, they top the group, and then they would have to have faced Japan in the round of 16. And there's no guarantee that Japan would have lost against Jordan like they eventually lost to Iran, for example. So there's so many little things here and there that could have stopped Jordan from making it all the way to this path, but that's how tournament football is sometimes. That's why we love it. It's always giving us these wonderful surprises. And that's not to say that Jordan didn't deserve their spot here in the final, because while, yes, they probably should not have won the game against Iraq, they still had a great first half performance there. They still gave the Iraqis a run for their money. And let's not forget that performance against South Korea here in the semifinal. It was one of the best individual performances that you will see from any team throughout this tournament here. They are in the final for the first time. This is actually their first time making it to the semifinals, let alone the final. And you have to say, when you compare these two teams together, I would say that Jordan is a much more, volatile team. You don't always know what you're going to expect, but when they're on form, when it's their day, they can beat anyone in this tournament, as we have seen here before. They're very, very powerful going forward, very dangerous going forward with their wealth of options, as I already mentioned. But that's not to say that your defense is weak. Yes, their defense can give away a few mistakes here and there, but for the most part, it has been pretty solid, pretty resolute throughout the tournament. Qatar, on the other hand, I think, in just terms of name quality, in terms of their squad list, they are a better team than Jordan. But it has not been the most well put together and consistent run to the final compared to 2019. Back in 2019, when Qatar won it all, they were smashing teams left and right. They ended up winning every single game, scoring 19 goals, only conceding 1. It's not like that this time around. And again, it's not to say that Qatar don't deserve their spot here in the final. Obviously, they earned it. But I think this time they're relying more so on individual players rather than the team collective like they were back in 2019. When you look at these two teams facing up against each other, I think that it's going to be a very close game. I think Jordan's going to go into this with no fear. Jordan has zero real pressure on them, versus Qatar has a lot of pressure on them, but Qatar at the same time is going to be really confident. They have the home crowd behind them. They have to basically redeem themselves, as I said in the beginning of the video, for their abysmal performance at the World Cup. And they also have the expectations. They have to maintain their status as the reigning champions. If you look at the history, it has not been since 2004, literally 20 years ago, that a team has retained their title at the Asian Cup, with Japan winning in 2000 and 2004. But that also shows it's not impossible. So while it's not likely, it is possible. On the flip side, it is possible for kind of an underdog team to win the Asian Cup. Iraq won the Asian Cup in 2007. So both of these teams have, when you look just particularly at the history, a realistic chance of coming out on top here. I think that it's just mainly going to come down to the momentum possibly going into this game here. And I predict that we're going to see some fireworks. I predict that we're going to see a crazy story here. I mean, what better way to end this tournament? In my opinion, the Asian Cup this year has been the best Asian Cup that I've ever seen. To be fair, I haven't seen that many. I'm not that old. But so far, this has been the best Asian Cup. We've seen so many surprises, so many crazy moments, so many last-minute goals and equalizers, and players having great tournaments. And I think that we're going to see the perfect ending to that here, with an underdog story being fulfilled. I think that Jordan will come out on top and defeat Qatar. Like I said, it's going to be a close game. I think that it's going to be 2-1 at the final whistle. I think that Jordan's just going to come out on the front foot and shock Qatar. I think that they will probably grab the opener, but Qatar, because of just the immense amount of individual talent they have, particularly a guy like Akram Afif, I think that they will grab an equalizer. I think Afif will either score or assist or play some part in that equalizer there. And it's going to go to extra time there. And at that point, it's going to be a 50-50 game. It's going to be anyone's game, similar to Qatar's game against Iran, where any team really has a good chance of going through. There's going to be chances going back and forth. But I think that Altamari, the Montpellier striker, is going to grab a really nice goal, maybe after a mazy dribble or something like that. And then with that, Jordan will be crowned Kings of Asia. They will be winning the 2023 Asian Cup here, in my opinion. Let me know what you guys think of my predictions here. Obviously, I just made a really hot take. Let me know if you agree, if you disagree. Do you think Qatar can win? Do you think, their superior experience and talent is just going to show through and they're going to easily win? Or do you think it's going to be much closer? Do you agree that Jordan can complete the underdog story? It's not unheard of. We've seen it before in international tournaments. Greece in the Euros, Canada in the Gold Cup going back a long time ago, Colombia in the Copa America, Zambia in the AFCON, and then of course Iraq in the 2007 Asian Cup, as I mentioned before. Tahiti even in the OFC Cup. It's not impossible. These things have happened in the past. So let me know what you think. Make sure to type all your thoughts in the comment section below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Share this video with a friend. Follow the Football Bloc on social media. But anyway, guys, my name is Brandon. This has been the Football Bloc, and I hope you guys have a nice rest of your night.
One step beyond.